So we're back with Locavana Live, which is we just realized is not actually live, but it's live-ish.
Live-ish.
So we are live, and then people seeing it, they'll see a version of the live. But we are here with Jami Goble from Ridgeview Farm, which is in Alto, Michigan. And Jami is it's been awesome to get to know you a little bit over the past couple months, to learn about your farm. I'm so excited for this conversation because I have a lot of questions.
That's fine. Ask away. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting. You know, we found we met at the farmers market in Ada.
In Ada,
At
yep.
the Ada farmers market, and just in the brief conversation, I was like, wow, this is a very unique type of person in a very good way because one, you're passionate, and that shows in everything you do.
Thank you.
But also very, I would say, like very sophisticated, elevated in the way that you think about farming, your animals, food in general. And so, just kind of, you have a beef farm. I've sort of read it on the website, but maybe if you just give us a quick, here's what we do, here's what Ridgeview Farm is,
Yeah.
the history.
So my husband and I initially came to Michigan to manage the farm, and we didn't have beef at all. We sold breeding stock.
Wow.
So that's how we started. So we had purebred Hereford cattle. We showed, and my husband judged all over the United States and Canada. So
Wow.
we had purebred breeding stock, and we showed them, and we had auctions and right there on our farm.
Where'd you come from?
I grew up in Indiana, and my husband's from Ontario, Canada.
Oh, nice.
So
That's awesome.
yeah, so our initial plan for the farm has completely changed over the years.
Yeah.
So we moved here in '99. We ran the farm for about 8 years, and then the owner gave us the opportunity to buy the farm that we'd been building.
Wow.
And we had always thought that we would only do the purebred livestock. That was our goals and our passions and what we really loved.
What does that mean, actually, though?
So think of it like you see kids at county fair that show cattle at like the 4-H level.
Yeah.
Sort of like that, only on a bigger scale. Like our 3 boys, they showed cattle throughout all the United States and Canada. They would have a herd of cattle of their own. It would be their breeding stock. They would go out and show it and win banners and trophies and things like that. And then that was like a marketing tool to promote those genetics.
Ah,
So
so
it's-
when you say a purebred, it's like a dog. It's like this is a Hereford cow.
Yep.
If the mom and the dad were Hereford, you can trace the lineage, and
we
it's
have pedigrees on all of them.
so you can crossbreed cows.
You
to
can
different types?
crossbreed different breeds of cattle. Like
Oh.
our herd right now is primarily Black Angus,
Okay.
and we breed them to a Hereford bull. Those F1 crosses is what gives us what we find to be the best meat. The right amount of marbling, the right amount of fat, the right amount of feed conversions, all the things that we look for to put that steak in the store. So ultimately,
Just make sure you're closer to the.
everything that we do is based off of the genetics to start with.
Wow.
So, and we also have about 1,000 acres of crops. So anything that those animals eat, from their hay to any of the grains, we grow ourselves as well.
You really the
Yep.
feed
Everything. We do everything. So my
So
husband
you
has
don't
a
buy
full-time
corn from anybody else?
job. No, it's just all our stuff.
Holy cow!
So
That's a lot of work. It
It-
sounds like a lot of work.
it's a lot of work, especially when it's just me on the farm, like
Yeah.
on the day to day. My husband
Yeah.
has a full-time job. All of our boys are grown. They have moved out west. 2 of them have recently come back to Michigan, but they both have jobs too. So when they get home, they got lots of work to do now that they're back.
So you have hands then, or you have no workers?
We have no workers. There's one lady,
Holy
Jane,
cow.
who grows the bison. She runs
Yeah.
the store on Mondays and Thursdays.
And that's how many cattle do you have? How many heads?
So we have 160 mama cows. So right now is calving season, so we'll have 100 calves this spring, and the rest will calve in the fall.
And how many acres?
We only own 250, but we farm a total of 1,000.
That's incredible. That's giant. And then you plant also oats and corn and
We
whatever else?
do all the corn, oats, spelts, barley. We do soybeans. That's just a sellable crop because we
Okay.
don't feed any soy.
Yeah.
All the hay ground, everything. So
That's more impressive than I realized. That's wild. Okay, so then the philosophy that you have, which you're very upfront about on the website, you're a steward of this cow, obviously, in your heart. And
we love what we do. I mean, if we didn't, you could not tolerate the days that are not ideal. Like this week when it's been so cold and tractors won't start and heated water bowls are not hot. Yeah. So it's things like that. But ultimately, we love the cattle first. That is that's both my husband and I's first passion. Like we love nothing more than to go out and walk through our cattle every day. So,
I'm going to ask a question, given that. This might be I hope it's not an insensitive question, but you love the cow, but you know it's going to be killed soon. Is that, how do you separate yourself like that?
It's different. Like we know they've had a great life. Right. We've raised them right. We've fed them right. We've tended to them. But ultimately, every animal is meant to be on our plate. And that's how more people need to look at it. They're not a pet. This is not our family dog. This is not, it's not something that we are attached to in a sentimental way.
It's a means, it's a utilitarian thing.
Even our mama cows eventually will be meat somewhere, not in our store, but somewhere else. Eventually, when they are done having calves and being productive, they do go for meat somewhere. Right. Just not in...
Yeah, Luke last week would call it subsistence fishing. Is like how everyone in Alaska lived. They didn't view it as like here in Michigan, you go fishing on the weekend. He's like, no, we have to fish. To take a picture of
yourself and post it like I'm fly fishing.
Like this is how we live. We have to fish to feed the family through the winter time. It's like a different mindset.
It is a different mindset, and when young kids are not shielded from that. That gives them a better perspective of where their food is coming from, and they don't have this mentality of, oh, I'm so sorry you kill cows. Yeah. No, I personally don't kill them. The process to have it done is done correctly. Right. But
the alternative is everybody starves.
Exactly.
I mean, people have been eating since
people can't live off their lawns. I'm sorry. That is not justifiable. So it's not good for human health or anything like that. Yeah. So
no, that's agreed. So when it comes to the way then you raise the cow, just talk about that. I've seen.
So all of our cattle are born, bred, and raised on our farm. So first and foremost, we look at the genetics. We have all the mama cows there.
So you don't buy a cow from an auction or?
Everything is born, bred, and raised on our farm. So we have all the mama cows. We have 7 different bulls. Those bulls run with different groups depending on.
You have your own bulls too.
Oh yeah.
So you don't even inseminate or anything.
We do a lot of insemination, though,
but from your cow, not from another cow somewhere else?
So it depends on genetics. Okay. So, like, when we find a bull that we really like, we're not going to spend $100,000 to buy him. We're going to buy semen, and we're going to AI breed our cows. Yep. So we do, but it's also about the genetics. So we're looking at those calves of what they're going to produce. And so ultimately, when we look at a bull or even a cow, we're also looking at what she is potentially going to produce or what he's going to produce for a calf.
Interesting.
And not just from the meat side of things, but also from, because some of our calves are obviously going to be heifers. We don't do any sex semen or anything like that. So we also have to.
So you can, if you only wanted males, you could do that?
Yes. So they do have sex semen. Like it's much more expensive and it's harder to get a pregnancy from. Oh. But yeah, there is sex semen for those herds that only want females or those herds that only want males. So yeah, there is sex semen.
Just out of curiosity, are they altering the semen or are they like figuring out this is a male?
It's a centrifuge process. Like they put the semen in these straws and it gets spun around at a certain, I don't know. It's a science thing. It gets spun around, and then the female versus the male separate. Wow. Now, it's not 100% accurate. You're always going to get some that don't separate properly. But it's not fairly new technology. It's probably been around for 10 or 15 years now. Yeah.
So anyway, so you all the calves are born on your
born on our place. Yep.
And I've only seen like bits and pieces, but that's like. That's a process, right? To give birth to a calf and like.
Well, I mean,
you have to go and pull on it and stuff.
Well, ultimately, you want the mama cow to lay down and have a calf on her own.
Right.
And I'm going to say 90% of the time they do.
Oh, okay.
There's the odd time where a calf is mispresented, whether it's got a leg back or a head back, or if it's backwards or breech. So then you have to go in.
And you're digging. You're like a doctor at that point.
I calve cows all the time. So the only ones I can't do on my own is a breech one. I'm just not physically strong enough or...
So you have a vet that comes into
Nope,
that?
my husband does.
Oh, it's just a strength thing. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just a strength.
So technically, you know that the problem.
We don't call a vet for hardly anything. If we call a vet for a calving, it's a C-section.
Wow.
And you're going to have those once in a while. We've probably had 5 in 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So we don't have to do that very often.
That's amazing.
But it's also about looking at genetics, making sure those pin bones are placed the way they're supposed to be, that the genetics of that mama cow is designed to have a calf. Ultimately, that's what they're supposed to do.
And so there are ways to farm in a way that's more responsible to the animal. Is effectively like not misbreeding,
Yep.
right?
And also calling animals. Like if we get a heifer calf that isn't going to make what we think is a good cow, we just ship her down the road. We don't feed females at our place. They come into heat every 3 weeks, and that's a whole nother ball game I don't want to get into. So we don't feed the heifers at our place. We just ship them. So ultimately, when you're looking at only having the best animals, it's about shipping that bottom half too and getting rid of them.
Sure. Well, that makes sense.
So what's the lifestyle like of a cow, and from when it's born on your farm up until the end of its life? What does that look like?
Oh, they got it pretty good. I mean, so like right now, of course, it's calving season, so we have what we call an up close lot. So those cows that we know that are about to calve within the next week or so, that is the area that they're in. And then at night, they come into the barn and they get locked in. And the reason why is you don't want her calving at 2 o'clock in the morning out in a snowbank.
Yeah.
It's just, you get frostbite ears. And if she does have trouble, it's a lot harder to get her into the barn to help her if she's already going into labor. So it's just, we just lock them in at night, keep them inside. But then as soon as I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, they go right back outside if they're not in labor. So once they have a calf and that calf is up and nursing, they go to what we call the maternity pen, and then they stay out there for a couple weeks. And that pen is just so we can make sure that calf is really strong, nursing, and doing everything it's supposed to. Mama cow knows where her baby's at. She's taking care of it the way she's supposed to. And then after that, they go out to what we call population. That's our whole entire herd, basically. So they go back out. They're always outside. We don't keep them confined or anything in a barn.
Even if it's -5 degrees, they're okay.
Even if it's -5 degrees. So those calves, the way it's called a tart barn. We have this tart barn. It's basically just a big plastic hoop. So the way it's designed is those babies can get in where that hay is kept and be a little bit more out of the elements, but mama cows stay outside the whole entire time. So just that gives those babies just a little extra shelter from any type of weather that comes. But all of our cows, they don't mind the cold. You just got to keep them out of the wind. So everyone has windbreaks and things like that. They're heavily bedded. We have it's called a hay buster. You take big round bales of straw and blow a 50-foot pack of nice bedding every single day out on their pack, and that's where they lay. Every day. That's what I was doing right before I came here. Here's your feed. Here's your bedding. This is what I do. So
that's crazy. And then in terms of so cows, like any animal, they get sick and stuff.
We don't have a whole lot of disease issues, and in part because everything's born, bred, and raised on our farm. And then, like when we do buy in,
so you're not bringing in sicknesses.
We're not. Yeah. So, like earlier this spring, my husband and I bought a small herd of Angus cows. They are quarantined for 90 days before they go with ours. It's just one of those. You don't have to do that. Just one of the things that we do.
Do you have to vaccinate or give any?
So there are some vaccines that we give to the pregnant cows. Basically, it's to help the calf not get E. coli or anything that could make it sick and die. But other than that, when calves are born, they get vitamin A, D, and E, and they get selenium. And because Michigan is so deficient in selenium, those are one of the things that a calf has to have to grow and develop properly. So it's just a mineral. But Michigan doesn't have it in the dirt like some other areas do. So, and it depends on your region. Some areas are high in selenium, some are low. Every mineral is different depending on where you live. and how your grasses grow and what type of grass you grow.
But so you don't give like a bunch of shots all the time, and
Nope, not at all.
just like that is a thing though that some.
Some places do. So, like bigger feedlots, when they're bringing in cattle from lots of different areas, they're going to have a disease issue if they don't vaccinate, because you've got 10 head from this place and 10 head from here and maybe 50 from here. It's kind of like when you bring your kids in from school for school.
Yeah, no, that makes
All
sense.
of a sudden, kids go to school and then everyone's sick.
Yeah.
Well, unless they're outside a lot. Mine weren't sick, but they ate a lot of dirt. So I chalk that up to that. So
I lived in Amarillo, Texas for a
Okay.
couple of years.
nice.
And is it? Have you
I don't
ever
know.
been there? But no, it's okay, I guess. But it's surrounded by those feedlots, and those are a sight to behold. Not necessarily in a good way.
They are interesting. But at the same time, if we didn't have them, because lots of people are not used to buying local, if we didn't have them, there wouldn't be meat. So
That's a great. So you've got. I guess I don't know if you'd call it like classifications, right? So first of all, I will tell you, whatever you're doing with the beef that you produce is out of this world.
thank you.
Out of this world. Like it's.
What we sell is what we put on our own plate. So
Yeah.
if I wasn't happy with it, we'd be changing gears.
Right.
So
It's out of this world. But so you've got, there's the, and I don't even know what a lot of this means, but so you've got what they call grass fed.
yep.
You have whatever, and then you've got, what you're going to get out of a feedlot. And there's probably a gradient of quality and so forth.
So there is. So like when you talked about those labeling, like grass-fed only, we don't grow ours that way. I don't agree with it. So it's kind of like taking a baby and when it's done nursing, only giving it iceberg lettuce. It
Oh,
is.
interesting.
So, and if you look at kids that are malnourished, they don't grow and develop properly. It's
Yeah.
the same with cattle. If you take a calf, and even though mama's giving lots of milk and doing her job, if that calf doesn't have extra nutrients as it grows, especially as we get closer to weaning time, and that calf is really starting to grow and develop, and then all of a sudden you're taking away mom, there isn't enough nutrients in grass to grow and develop a calf properly. It's certainly not going to make them marble up nicely and have that fat that you need for flavor.
Would you see a big change in the weight of a grass-fed?
You would. You would also see, like if you're used to looking at cattle, some people just say, oh, they all look the same.
Yeah.
That is not true by any means whatsoever. So when you look at an animal, if you know what you're looking for, you can tell if it's healthy or not. Like, yes, cattle are going to get dirty and things like that depending on time of year. But if an animal always looks pretty shaggy and looks dirty and ears are down and eyes are kind of glossed over, that's not a very healthy animal. So proper nutrients is part of making sure that animal is healthy.
So how come everyone comes up to me at the farmer's market and a lot of people say, is your beef grass-fed? Because it's just a buzzword
It's
that
a
people get told
buzzword.
all the time. So why do some
And in
people prefer
part,
it?
So doctors are like, oh, grass-fed because you don't want fat. Well, if you start reading now, fat is actually good.
Yeah,
So
I
we
agree
need
with that.
good
No,
fats.
honestly,
Yep.
I agree wholeheartedly, especially real fat. Like
Yeah, real
fats
fat.
that come from nut oils and all that
Yep.
nonsense.
Nope.
No.
We're talking real fat, like
Yeah.
suet being rendered down to tallow. We're talking real butter. We're talking
Beef tallow,
bacon
like
grease,
frying
all
in
that.
beef tallow is
Yep.
Oh,
more
it's the
healthy
best.
than anything you could. It's
Yep.
better tasting,
Yeah.
but it's actually more healthy too.
And a lot of healthcare magazines, as bad as that is to say, they are people's leading news on ag, and they should not have anything to do with that because they don't know. And so it's another thing where they're talking about no fat, no fat, no fat. And so you go to grass fed, and that's just not ideal. It's not good for humans, and it's not good for the animals. Now, ours are out on grass year round,
Sure.
but there's no grass in Michigan this time of year.
Right.
So they can paw through the snow, but there's no nutrients in that grass once they get to it.
If I'm just thinking, I try and break things down to like logic. So a cow is a descendant of something like related to a buffalo or a yak or something, probably. Something, I don't know.
Maybe.
They look enough alike. I'm going to go with that. That's not science, but that's me. But if a buffalo is wandering around, it's going to eat some grass, but it's going to find wild grain. It's going to find wild beans. It's going to find all kinds of stuff.
And grasses, once they're allowed to grow up, they do produce a seed.
Yeah.
So like that's how you get grass seed and things like that. And like there is wild rye and wild corn and wild onions. Animals are going to eat whatever they can gravitate to and what nourishes them. So.
But if it's just on a pasture, there's not going to be a wild
because
grain.
buffalo roamed thousands upon thousands of acres, where cattle are typically within some sort of parameters and fencing.
That's super interesting. Okay, so you've got that. Then you've got, we'll go to the other end of the spectrum, the feedlot, where they're just coming in, dumping corn, making them fat.
And everybody's feedlot is different what they feed. Some places feed like a silage. Some people feed corn. Some people feed high moisture.
Silage is broken up corn stalks. Is that what it is?
It depends. You can have hay silage. You can have corn silage. There's all different types of silage, but basically it's a fermented feed.
Ferment.
Every place feeds different depending on what they have access to. And these big feedlots, that's what they've grown to be because of necessity. Like they have contracts. They have to grow X amount of cattle in X amount of time. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just not how I choose to do things.
I'll say there's something wrong with it. I mean, on the face of it, I would, because I've seen it. I mean, honestly, and then now, what's your point though that I want to get to is a super good one. But if you just looked at a feedlot, you'd be like,
if you just looked at a feedlot,
awesome. But
it's short term though.
Okay, well, that's fair.
So I've never seen a feedlot. So what does it look like?
As far as the eye can see, cows from ass to face, and they're
Just tight in a pen?
Yeah,
They're not on grass. They're in a pen.
It's
everything
cement.
that they eat,
They're on a
everything that
cement
they
thing.
eat is something that is hand fed to
and
them.
it's just a giant trough around the whole perimeter, and they just sit there for I don't know for how long, but
It depends on the feedlot. Most of them are pretty short term. They get cattle in on day X and they go out on day X. Like it's all short term for them.
But so
This is
here's
end of life? Right
Oh, yeah,
before
it's like
right before they're gonna
the Last Supper.
to bulk them up.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But so here's the point that it's a good one. So if you looked at a feedlot just on its face, you'd be like, that's not natural. If nothing else, right? Let's say it's fine. But it's definitely not a natural setting.
No.
So, but they probably, as a percentage of all the beef consumed, could produce the vast majority.
I
Right.
would say 85 to 90% of the meat.
Yeah, and everything else is basically like what you're doing.
Yep.
So this is the
But
question.
it's really hard to be a small family farm like mine. Like
It sure is, yeah. And that's
financially, it doesn't make any sense. Work-wise, it doesn't make any sense. There is a lot of time and effort that goes into a small family farm. And there's not a lot of financial reward, and it's a lot of heartache sometimes. So it also comes with a lot of backlash from people who don't understand farming too. So
what
when
kind
people-
of backlash could there be? Doing the most responsible way to farm something?
But
is
people don't
backlash?
see it that way. Oh, you kill cows. That's how
Well,
they
everybody
see it.
that eats cows kills cows.
I understand that.
PETA comes over.
And PETA, that's a whole nother can of worms that those people don't know what they're talking about most of the time. And that's part of the problem. There is this whole scenario of people out there doing videos and talking about ag that know nothing about it. A few years ago, there was a dairy farm, and PETA came in and did these videos, and it looked like abuse. It wasn't. If you actually looked at the video, it was already a dead calf. It was the same calf in all 5 or 6 videos, whatever it was. But nobody realizes that because they don't know enough to look and be like, wait, what's going on here? They instantly,
you can spin things and make
they
fake.
instantly backlash on this farm. And it's like, whoa, this is all made up. And it was.
Well, and that's the whole point is like, do you want nobody to have food?
Well, and that's just it.
But so this goes full circle to your comment. So let's say feedlot, let's say we all just wanted to not have feedlots. That's not an option. Simply not an option, at least not overnight. But
Not overnight.
could, if the food supply chain was to fix itself somehow, like how would you feed people with only beef in a way that's grown in the way that you do it?
It's almost impossible. And in part because we have big cities,
Yeah.
New York, Detroit, places like that. They don't grow food there.
Right.
They can't.
But they
even
grow food around it though. Like, so let's. Do you sell any beef that goes to a supermarket or a processor or anything? So everything you sell is sold from your store
Yep,
to
to-
people right around you.
Yep. So whether it's in my own farm store, through Locavana, through Deep Roots, or with me at the farmer's market.
Wow.
So it's, but I couldn't, I could get bigger,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure I really want to. Like,
Right.
I
Well,
know where
you
my
could-
lines
You're already
are.
at 1,000 acres by yourself. That
But
seems
I'm
like
already at that line of, I know what we can do to get a little bit bigger, but
Yeah.
we're just going to stay right where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is what's manageable. If most people came into my life, they're like, this is unmanageable. But like,
Do you have a sense for how many pounds per year you produce or sell or whatever? Because what I'm trying to do is I want to do a little math. Like, how many Ridgeview farms would it take to feed the state of Michigan?
well, you're talking a
Is there
Ridgeview
enough?
farm for every, I mean, you're talking a Ridgeview farm at least for every 20 square miles, basically. Like how, depending on
20
how,
square miles.
depending on how many people live in that area.
Sure.
But
Well, if it's
basically,
Detroit, it's like probably 10 Ridgeview farms at least. Maybe more.
Way more.
probably more than that. So like my farm does 150.
So it takes a lot of Ridgeview farms. Let's
It
just say
takes a
that.
lot of Ridgeview farms. And the thing is, like with farming, people don't want to put that much. Like right now, it's calving season, so either my husband or I, we get up every 2 hours all night long to make sure a cow is not in labor or having trouble or things like that. People don't want to do that.
How long is that season where you're doing that?
We're basically January to April, and then September, October.
That's when they have babies in the winter?
Well, that's our breeding season.
I see, right.
Every farm breeds their cattle differently. Some people, especially in the state of Michigan, they don't start breeding till about March.
'Cause they don't wanna-
they don't start calving till about
How
March.
long is the gestation cycle?
9 months.
Oh, so you can time it. You know when it's going
Yeah, so we have what we would call a tighter breeding season because we know we want these cattle to calve within this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So if we preg check and someone isn't pregnant for one reason,
Mm-hmm.
there's two different options. You either go to a fall season if you're supposed to be spring,
Yep.
or you go away.
Okay.
A lot of times they go away. So I don't deal with non-fertile cattle.
Mm-hmm.
They have a tendency to have offspring that aren't fertile, so we just
Oh,
don't
okay.
play that game.
Yeah, which makes sense. So then, what is the best way, in your opinion, to create a food supply chain that does feed 350 million Americans without giving them a bunch of questionable?
It used to be communities bought within their community,
Yeah, which makes total sense.
which makes total sense.
Absolute
and we're not
sense.
shipping.
Right.
But first and foremost, we have to start with not importing from foreign countries. Like, that's where we start.
We import beef from foreign countries?
We import a lot of beef. Mexico, China.
Like what do you have a sense of what percentage is imported?
So I don't know the percentage, but
I can probably look it up right now.
you
Yeah.
can probably look it up. But there is a lot of beef that is imported. Mexico, Argentina, Brazil.
When you say it's imported, is it a live cow or is it
Nope.
processed?
It's frozen meat.
Really? I actually didn't know that.
Yes. So we start by shutting down those borders and not importing is where it starts.
Now,
So
let's
then
say
we're
we
s-
just I'm devil's advocate.
No.
If you did that, would people be hungry tomorrow?
no,
do we have
there's enough cattle in the United States.
Do we also export cattle?
We do export cattle.
See, that's ridiculous. Is that
I-
right? Like
I-
one goes that way, one comes
And
in.
that's what I don't agree with.
And
So,
what's
like,
the purpose? Just price is cheaper from
price?
China?
It's the United States can buy meat cheap
Mm-hmm.
from places like Mexico.
Mm.
The beef prices have gone up significantly recently, and in part
Hmm.
because there's an area of Mexico that got some disease. So we
Really?
stopped importing meat from this area of Mexico.
Well, that's also concerning, though.
It is
Because at
con-
what point did they catch
It is
that?
concerning. It's concerning to me from the fact that the United States isn't supporting the U.S. farmer.
Sure.
Like we start with helping our own first. Like, let's get our farmers and ranchers to a place where they can afford to keep doing what they love to do.
Yes.
The only reason farming quits is because they can't afford to keep doing it. It's not because they don't have a love or a passion for it.
Right.
It's because it's not financially responsible for them to do
No, and that's
so.
what people don't understand. I mean, this much I do know because I know several farmers. I mean, the amount of just equipment, land, all that stuff is unbelievable. And then your inputs.
Yep.
That's what I think most people, they would look at like, oh, you need big tractors. That sounds expensive. But then just the inputs are crazy.
Well,
and those have skyrocketed.
When those big tractors, they take $6,000 to fill up in fuel. And that fuel doesn't last even half a day. Like, it's things
Holy
like that
mackerel.
people don't understand, that there's a lot of inputs that go into it.
Yeah.
And farmers don't even pay themselves for their time.
No.
Like,
Well,
that's the other thing. We can't get people who want to work.
Yeah.
We have to do it ourselves, and we don't pay ourselves for our time.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy balance.
And so I assume that the imports drive the prices down.
Yes.
So I got the number. What's your guys' guess?
How much is imported?
I would
of
say
beef?
37%.
They said 8 to 12. I don't know if that's
Okay.
believable,
8
but
to 12%.
I would say it's a little higher than that. But
Yeah, I would
I mean,
too.
but still, even at that percentage,
I said beef.
Well, it's
8 to 12% of beef is
yeah. So
imported.
10, just say 10%. What's the total?
Amount of pounds.
Yeah. Because like that's gonna be tens of millions of pounds or something like that, maybe more. But
and like weather's one of those factors that we can't control.
Yeah.
There are farmers that go out of business because they can't afford to feed their animals, so they ship them. And I get that. Nobody wants their animals to starve. So if you know you don't have feed, you sell them one way or another. Wow. So those are other factors that go into it too. We
Yep.
can't control the weather, whether it's flood or drought or just a bad season.
yeah,
Yeah, 12% is 3.4 billion pounds.
That's a lot of meat.
It's a lot.
it's crazy. Well, and you think about it, if that's plenty percentage to affect the price. I mean, you could easily drive the price down by flooding it with 10% of super cheap, and you have no idea how that cow was raised, and that's
Because frozen meat coming in doesn't have to meet the same USDA standards as American meat.
How is that possible?
Welcome to our government.
wow.
So
Wait
'cause
a
it's
second,
frozen.
that doesn't make sense.
Well, it's frozen meat.
What does that
And it doesn't.
affect? 'Cause
but it
eventually it's
also
going to
do-
be unfrozen.
But other places could sell it as fresh. They don't have to state that it was frozen ahead of time. So there's all these. Like, we could keep going down different rabbit holes.
Well, let's go down them.
Yeah, go down the
I don't
requirements.
have all day today. I do have to open my store. So,
Okay.
but yeah,
What is your time frame, just so we can?
I have about 30 to 40 minutes
Okay, left.
left.
Perfect. We could do that.
So,
But isn't the whole point of an USDA standard for food safety?
yes, it is. So, like at
But
our
if you
store,
freeze it, then it's not a problem. If I freeze the disease, it's all right.
well, so it doesn't necessarily mean it has a disease.
No, I know.
Like, it's
I'm
not
being a
coming
little
in
bit
with
facetious.
diseases.
Right.
But there's also no way of knowing how it's been raised.
What if it was? You also don't know how long it was not frozen before it was frozen, right?
So, like on all of our meat is frozen. I don't do anything fresh unless someone specifically says I want a fresh
Well,
whole tenderloin or whatever.
but that's just a timing thing.
and
I mean,
that's a timing thing.
you have to freeze. Even if I buy steak, I freeze it
Yeah,
because.
so-
But it lasts forever like that.
Yes, I mean when it's properly frozen
Yeah.
and it stays at the right temp and the vacuum hasn't busted or anything like that. That's one thing. People pick up chuck roast by the corner.
Yeah.
Just pick it up by the meat. Don't pick it up by the corners. That's how those vacuums get.
I mean, I've eaten personally. I've eaten things that I've had in the freezer for 2 years and they're fine.
We eat stuff all the time that's been in there like I don't sell anything that hasn't been harvested in 6 months in the store.
Oh,
that's
really?
just what I do.
Okay.
But I feed it to my kids and my family. It's perfectly fine.
It is. I've
But
done it. Yeah.
people's they've got this delusion in their mind that if it hasn't just been harvested, it isn't fresh anymore.
Yeah,
that isn't the case.
But when you froze, I think that's the key. Is how long was it until it got frozen?
Well, and that's just it. Like all of ours is flash frozen as soon as it's vacuum packed.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly moving meat, and in fact, this morning I just unloaded 6 head of steers and 6 head of pork into my walk-in freezer this morning. So my husband was kind enough to go pick that up for me while I did chores. I'm like, hey, can you do this today? Wow. So that's just part of it.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. Our food source is very broken in a manner because of people don't buy local anymore. They buy for convenience.
Yeah.
They go to the big stores. But right now, it's so broken. If we stopped all that all of a sudden, people would die.
Right.
They don't know where else to go. They don't know how to find those food sources.
Interesting.
So, and not just with beef, with all of it, pork, bison, like even vegetables.
Yeah, so that's cool. So you also sell bison meat, which is also so delicious.
So yeah, the Hawkins, right?
amazing.
Their farm is located right beside ours. They grow all the bison right there.
That's so cool.
So.
Did the bison and the cows ever interact with each other?
No.
Would that be bad if they did?
It would be very bad.
Yeah.
And in part, like, if our cows get out, we herd them back in.
Yeah.
If the bison get out, that is not the case. They have a different means. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
Because they're just mean, or
Yeah, they are
they are huge.
They
animals.
are still a wild animal.
Yeah.
They even sometimes when they go out to feed them, they're ramming on the tractor, and it's not the same as animals. And people's like, oh, look how cute they are.
Yeah.
You stay away from them.
It's like the tourists in Yellowstone that walk up to the wild bison.
People are interesting.
Yeah.
I don't understand how someone thinks that they're not pets.
Right.
And that's part of the problem. People have this mentality of all animals are pets. That is not the case.
Yeah.
Like I even have mama cows that, especially when they're calving, they don't like people sometimes. And so you still have to be cautious. Even though I know these animals, I'm still pretty cautious, especially when that cow's just had a calf.
Yeah.
So
That's
you just got to
crazy.
be extra careful sometimes.
Wow.
And still things happen. Like you're not out of the woods all the time. So
Yeah, and that's like a whole nother thing with the bison. Just like, where do you even get a bison?
Well, and the Hawkins, they've had bison for like 40 years now.
Wow.
It was one of those things they always wanted them, so they got some, and they just kept breeding them and bringing in different things.
Interesting.
And now I don't know, they have probably 40 mama cows out there now.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And that's pretty
tasty meat,
big
too.
for a
That's really
bison farm. So
Yeah, and I like the bison brats too. Those are
yeah,
tasty.
they do a great job with their stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And then the lamb, where do you get that from?
So we have 2 different breeders for pork and lamb. We used to feed them at our place, but once all my boys moved out west, it got a little harder to keep up with everything. So the 2 breeders that I have, they feed the same ration I always fed. So I just have them feed now. I have to pick and choose what I'm doing. Because there's only so many hours in a day. And
How do you patrol? Do you have like ATVs and stuff, or horses, or how do you go around 1,000 acres? That sounds like.
so like the crops we don't have to look at. My husband takes
I
care of
guess
all the
that's true.
crops.
But you're still on a tractor though.
Yep, we're still on a tractor. So, but my husband, he takes care of the crops. He's like, this is what we're growing. But
Do you have to
drive-
rotate? Do you do any like?
Oh
that
yeah,
sort of thing?
so everything's rotation. So including our pastures. Like when we get a pasture that isn't like meeting what we find to be our high standard to keep our cows out there, then we will turn it into crop ground, flip it around, and then
Oh, it's probably so fertile by that time too, because
exactly
it's
because
been
the cows
manure.
have been out there. So
Yeah.
then within about a 5-year rotation, it'll come back to being pasture again. So
Interesting.
every field gets treated differently because of what it's going to be for the next year.
Wow.
And when we're out looking at cows, we're like, okay, this field's just about done being a pasture. Next year it's going to be this. The year after is going to be, so that we have a 5-year plan for all those fields.
I mean, it never ends though. Like you're thinking about this. Do you take vacation?
No. No.
Wow.
So
Well, if you ever want to take a vacation, I will watch your farm for you because
I mean, it looks like a vacation destination though. Like driving through those
does.
rolling
It's so
hills.
beautiful
it's
there.
awesome.
it is
It
beautiful.
really
The
is
farm
amazing.
is beautiful. And we're like, my favorite time is walking through the cattle and having a nice cup of coffee and just looking
Yeah.
at the stock. That's
Yeah.
my favorite.
That's
But
pretty cool.
not this time of year because you're tromping through snow and
It's
slipping
cold.
on ice and all
Gosh,
that.
it's cold right now.
But yeah, summer and fall favorites.
Oh,
So
Do you guys do you have deer problems or anything?
We
or-
do have some deer issue, more for our crops. They don't really
Yeah,
come
true.
up into our fields per se, or into our pasture fields with
Would
the
a
cows.
deer and a cow have an issue if they met each other? Probably wouldn't. They probably just stay away from each other.
They'd probably stay away, but some of our cows would probably shush them out of the
Especially
field.
the bulls
So
probably would try and.
our bulls
them
are
the
pretty
horn.
easy to get along with.
Are
If
they?
they weren't, they don't get to stay. Because I'm out there every day. If I thought a bull was dangerous, he wouldn't get to stay.
One time I was in the military and we were doing some navigation training in California, and you were on your own and you had to like go find a point like several kilometers away. And so I was walking and I come down into this valley. And when you're doing compass navigation, like it's very important to stay on your bearing, because as soon as you veer off, like when you extrapolate that out, you could be like way off. So you're like very fixed. And I came on this group of cows that now I didn't even know. I was like, why in God's name are there a bunch of cows here? I'm sure somebody was leasing the land, like the BLM or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I started walking and I was like, I was so scared of these cows. And then there was like a bull. I don't even know if it was a bull. I thought it was a bull.
The tough
But
Navy SEALs scared of the cows, huh?
But I was like, you know what? I'm going around. And I probably got lost. But they're intimidating animals. If you are not used to them,
If you're not used to
I
them,
was
yes.
not getting close to these things. It was like, they're huge. They don't look it on TV, but they're big. And you feel like, I'm sure they could hurt you if they wanted to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, our mama cows probably average 1,800 pounds. Like, we have big cows. So,
Yeah. It's crazy. Now, do you have a question?
I was just going to change gears into kind of like the theme behind our show is finding out what's real in the food supply.
Yeah, I was going to
Okay.
go there too. Perfect time.
And so for like our audience who is not an expert in, food and the food supply, but they want to feed their families healthy food, and that's super important to them. I think that's a core demographic from the people who are buying Locavana. How do we educate them so they can go to a farmer's market, go online, and ask the right questions?
What are
look
the
for
questions? That's the question.
Yeah, what are the
question
questions?
is,
What to
what
look
is the
for?
question? What is the question to ask?
number one, make sure the farmer's actually selling their meat. Like, for me, we raise all of our stock. There's going to be some places that buy meat from someone else and sell it. And if you have 100 different farms, they have 100 different ways of doing it. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Everyone's got their own ways. But for us, all of ours are born, bred, and raised right on our place. I personally see those cattle every single day. That is a big thing for me. At some farmers markets, they don't look at the legalities of who's selling meat. So make sure that that person's licensed to sell meat, that they have a food retail license, that their meat is USDA inspected to sell those individual packages of meat. Quarters and halves, if you buy from a farmer that only sells quarters and halves, it does not have to be USDA inspected. It'll have a bright orange sticker that says not for sale on every package of meat. That means that you've bought a quarter of beef, you own the cow, and that is your meat from that animal. Right. Everyone does things different. I can't say farmer A is doing it wrong. Like, to me, everyone does what they feel is best for within their means.
And everybody should, to me, the key, I agree. And some people may say, well, I want grass fed, or I want
fine.
it from a feedlot. I just want it to be cheap.
Yep.
At least you should be able to make that choice consciously.
You
need to have
choice.
the information,
And
and then
there's
you eat whatever you want.
There's 1,000 farmers out there, and they have 1,000 different ways of doing it. And I would never bash another farmer for doing it however they choose is right for them, and that is great.
Right.
I'm not about that. It's
Right.
just everyone's trying to make a living doing something that they love to do. We are not corporate farming. There's tons of corporate farmers out there too. Who's ever taking care of those animals, they generally have a good desire to take care of them the best means they can for that situation.
Sure.
For me, we just do it the way we think is best for us. So, and for us, I love cattle. I do. We love our breeding stock. I don't know. That's where we started. Right. So for us, it's different.
How do you grow cows made out of plants? I've never seen a cow made out of.
You don't. That's like 2 ingredients away from plastic.
I know. It's so bad. And if you look at the health, like you're way better off eating beef because it's got more fat, more salt, more everything.
And here's where I don't always agree with our USDA standards because someone approved that. Nobody should have ever approved that ever.
It is pretty terrible.
Find a farmer, get your meat from your farmer.
Yeah.
I think that market's kind of worked itself out, though. It had its peak a couple of years ago, but all those companies have been struggling.
Well,
Well,
I
and
mean,
they
just
should
look at
struggle.
you just have to, even if you're okay with the chemicals,
Yeah.
which you shouldn't be, they're just as bad. They have more fat, more salt, more it's like,
It's a slap in the face to the 10,000 humans who've lived before us.
Well, and that's just it. It's a slap in the face to the American farmer. It's a slap in the face to anyone who grows food. That should have never been something that even crossed someone's mind to even do, in my opinion. Just my opinion, mind you. But
well, I can see why you'd have that opinion.
well, there's nothing better than a perfect burger or a steak that's
Oh
grown.
my gosh, yeah.
Oh yeah, no. So let me ask you another one, and I think again this is going to go back to people make their choice and
People
people
make their choices.
whatever. But
Yep.
I know that there are differing opinions on the organic label.
There are many different opinions on the organic label. No different than grass-fed. Some organic products are not healthy. That they're just not.
Oh yeah.
Grass-fed is just less fat. It doesn't mean that animal probably has less nutrients. If someone chooses grass-fed, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like as long as people know what they're getting.
Yep.
And the farmer that's selling it is being open and honest about what they're doing.
You know why I would, before I had this conversation, because I didn't even know that, but the reason I could see somebody saying, oh, I want something that only ate grass, because at least then you know what it ate.
Yep.
That to me is like, but if you know, this cow also got supplemented with grain and barley and whatever, but it was grown on that same farm.
Yep.
To me, that's like, okay, that's sort of the ideal then versus, but I could see why you're like, you know what, at least if it only ate grass, I know it didn't eat
Yep.
a bunch of garbage in a feedlot.
But at the same time, like in different areas have different grasses. Like out west, they have a lot of sage. So that meat's going to have like a sage flavor to
I
it.
do like sage. Sage is good.
Because that is what those animals eat out there. So
Right.
every area, depending on its nutritional value and what they have available to eat, meat's going to have a little bit different flavor depending on the area of the country.
So what about in terms of the grading of grain-fed beef? So I know you mentioned that you grow all of it on your property. Like, is there a more expensive one that you're feeding the cattle that, you know, if someone went the cheap route, they would do cheap grains, or is it all?
So we live in Michigan. The cereal company Kellogg's, they give out scraps, and there's places that feed their animals day-old breads, cereal scraps, just whatever's inexpensive.
Frosted Flakes for your cows.
Stuff
Fruit
that-
Loops.
I've known people
No,
that
only
do
the only kids in America knows.
Yeah, they would
They gotta
never
stay-
give that to a cow.
I'm not okay that way, but there's lots of places that it's cheap, and cattle will eat it. Like
Yeah.
it's what something gets used to. If that's what they're given to eat,
Yeah.
that's what they get
Do you have
used
to serve it with milk then, or is
Not that I'm aware of. Probably. A
how do
little
they hold the
extra water.
spoon? So then, getting back to the organic thing. So, like, I saw this. I don't know if you probably don't watch, but there's Russell Crowe. He's like an actor. I don't know if you know Russell Crowe, but
don't
anyway,
watch
he's an actor.
Gladiator.
Yeah, Gladiator.
I don't
guy.
watch
He,
TV,
he's a
so-
beef farmer
Okay.
in Australia because he's
Okay.
Australian, and he was talking on a podcast about because he sort of sounds like he very much cares about the way that the animal is. He was talking about he grain finishes because he's kind of the same. Like the cow has access to grass
Yep.
at all time, and then he gives it grain. But he was talking about the organic label, and in order to do that, he was talking about how there's a certain, I forget, it's like a powder that they put on its back because it gets bitten by flies all the time,
Okay, like a fly dust.
I guess.
Yep.
And yeah, that sounds like it. And he was saying like the animal has a better life with the ability for him to put that on there, but then it negates being able to call it organic. So his view on this show, and again, I'm not an expert, was like organic doesn't necessarily mean that the animal had a better life or
No, it doesn't. And that's just it. Like flies are
What
obviously.
does it mean? What does it take to be called organic?
Oh, there's this whole certification. It takes like 7 or 8 years to become certified. All your ground has to be certified organic first. It doesn't necessarily mean it's better.
Right.
And if people want to go that route, good for them.
Yeah.
That is not, we don't have any certifications as far as organic goes. I want the best life for my cattle. And in the summertime, flies are certainly an issue.
Right.
And if you have flies, you're going to get pink eye, you're going to have more disease because flies carry that. If you have means to keep the flies off your animals, that's what you need to do.
That's exactly what he
Because you don't
said.
want them,
Exactly
people
what
don't
he
like
said.
getting bit by flies.
Yeah.
Cattle don't like it either.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you like, why not give your kids like, suntan lotion or sunblock, or whatever, whatever you have the ability to take care of this animal.
Yep.
And it
And
actually
first
is a
and
better
foremost,
offer.
that is my job to take care of those animals the very best I possibly can.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Interesting.
and I mean, we have to be stewards of the land, and when we're stewards of the land and the animal, it all works out.
No, well, you do a fine job of it. How's your time?
We're good.
Probably
I got 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
So how about the differences between, optimizing for taste, like something you would sell to Peter Luger Steakhouse versus optimizing for health? Is there a difference, or are those
Not
the same
really.
thing?
So, like, ultimately, it starts with the genetics. So we look really closely at the genetics of those animals, and now through technology, you can ultrasound for amount of fat, marbling, ribeye size, all those things. Wow. So, like, when we are looking at genetics of a new bull, we can look at his what's called an EPD, and here's this whole list of numbers based on genetics and what they've done through ultrasound to say, this is how big his ribeye is going to be, this is how much fat cover, this is the marbling. So we can look at all these different genetic traits under the skin without having to butcher anything yet.
Oh, that's nice.
So technology continues to change. And in a good way in many aspects, not all aspects, but in a lot of aspects, because we can see what's under the hide of that steer calf before it's even butchered.
That's pretty crazy.
So like even our county fair, my kids always showed at Kent County Fair. So they started ultrasounding every single steer that was at that county fair. And they put out the list and it says, here's how much back fat is on this one. This is the amount of marbling. This is the size of ribeye. So people can see what's under the hide before it's harvested.
Those are so fun. Have you ever been to a county fair? We have to go.
You've
in the
never
summer.
been
It
to a
is
county
so
fair?
I
fun.
grew up in Southern
He's a city boy
California.
here. So I grew up in New York. I had never been to one until I moved to Michigan, and it's like the most fun, especially the auction. So you have these kids that spend all year raising like one animal, one
The
pig,
future farmer FFA.
4-H usually around here.
FFA does sell animals at county fair. The FFA also is like these kids are learning how to run a business, like learning Robert's Rules and Parley Pro and things like that.
Oh, that's really
so
cool.
they can sit in a board meeting and do it legally and properly. Those are the things that those kids learn through
That's
FFA.
cool. That's
But FFA funds itself through selling livestock at a county fair. So, and all these kids, like you were saying, my boys grew up this way.
Yeah.
They literally get their so our county fair was in August. They get their next year's calf in September,
Yeah.
October, and they work a whole entire year
yeah.
to take that calf to county fair.
Yep. But then, so what it is, so you'd go and there's like an auction, and I bid. It's like an adrenaline rush. But it's obviously
Do you have a little sign where you,
you just raise your hand. But there's like an auction guy, and he's talking fast.
the horse
It's like,
jockey or the horse announcer?
yeah. It's like, blah, 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 blah. But like the point of it is to support the kids. So I think you pay more on purpose than you would for any other piece of meat you'll ever
So
buy.
a lot of local businesses go and they support these kids.
Yeah.
And the reason why these kids that show at county fair, these are the kids putting in time and effort.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
the ones purposely getting up in the morning, going out and working in the morning before school. They're working after school on these projects.
Yeah.
they don't have the option of laying in bed on a Saturday or Sunday morning just because it's a weekend. They still have stock to tend to.
Yeah.
So whether it's a pig or a sheep or a beef animal, whatever it might be, these kids are the ones that are going to be in the work sector later on. These businesses know that.
Yeah.
So they go and they support these kids. So these kids have money, not just to fund their next year's project, but to fund these kids later on to go to school and to come work for them later on.
They could make a couple $1,000s if they sell a cow. You know what I mean? So because you bidding by the pound, and and it's fun because you watch the kid like when it starts getting bid up and the kids
So these kids
excited.
all have a break-even point. So they have to do record books. So they know,
Wow.
I spent $2,000 buying my calf a year ago.
Right.
I've got $1,500 worth of feed.
Yeah.
My steer currently weighs X amount. I have to make $2.97 a pound to break even on just the cost. That does not include any time that these kids have put into it.
He said it's every day.
Every morning, every night.
Yeah.
Like right now in the cold weather, you have to make sure your water bowls are working.
Twice a
all
day.
day
That's what I've heard. Like if you have horses, cows, anything, you're twice a day.
That is awesome.
It's awesome.
I love when
I
people
wish
say
more-
it's twice
I
a
wish
day,
I had
'cause
to
it's
do
lot
that
more
as a
often
kid.
than that, but
Is it?
that's okay.
Well, yeah. You're
Well,
right.
like,
You're right.
feeding schedules are typically twice a day, but
Yeah.
like I've already checked water bowls twice today. When I get home, that's what I'll do before I open up the store. When my husband gets home, I'll have him do certain things.
Yeah.
So it's more than twice a day, but that's okay.
People talk about how like the next generation is always softer. If people are doing that every day, there's no way you're going to be soft.
No.
If people force their kids to go work on a farm for even just a summer, those kids would have a better understanding of a lot of things, including hard work and what goes into it.
Yep.
And
But like you said, it's also the fact that we eat animals. We always have, and
We
we
always
always
have.
will. And
that
that's
was people didn't eat a lot of lettuce or kale or peppers or onions. I mean, yes, we have a very short growing season here in Michigan. You can only eat what you can store. People primarily relied on meat because you can, whether it's a rabbit or a goat or whatever it might be, people primarily ate meat.
Yeah.
So
So let me ask you this. I know a lot of people when they buy steak and beef, they're just getting, the meat. And I know you sell like the liver, the tongue, the heart, the
We
nose
sell
to
everything.
tail,
Yep.
everything. Do you
Oxtail,
eat
yes,
everything or,
delicious. Oh,
or
yeah.
do you just stick to the ribeyes and things like that?
I wish I could eat ribs every day. No, my husband would be really happy if we only ate the Delmonico's or the rib steaks. But no, we eat everything.
Yeah.
Like oxtail makes an amazing bone broth. So
I never actually, be honest with you, I never heard of it before.
oxtail?
And then I looked it up. It's like a delicacy.
Yeah,
though. It's
it
like a
is.
super high end.
Oxtail soup is delicious.
Yeah.
And
in restaurants, it's like super expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And you sell that.
I make bone broth out of it every single week. So I like it. But like I also like liver.
Yeah.
My
It's
son
supposed to be really
loves
good for you,
tongue
too.
on egg sandwich every morning.
What is that stuff you were talking about? It's like they grind it up and you.
So I've used to buy beef from this other company that would mix in some of the liver, the
and
heart,
the ground beef,
kidneys,
right?
and they mixed it into the ground beef.
Yeah.
It's like
What'd they call it?
90%.
So it's like the organ meat mixed into
Yeah,
the
it's
ground.
90% ground beef, 10% organ beef.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the health benefit?
Presumably,
There are health benefits to the organ meat. It
Yeah.
also takes a different license to be able to grind organs with meat.
Oh, interesting.
So that's a whole nother, like our butchers don't do that because that's a whole separate facility, a whole separate licensing. So if people want that, I just encourage them to take their ground beef, grind up their own liver, and mix it themselves.
Mix it, yeah.
So you know what my favorite one is, and I don't even want to announce this because I don't want you to be out of stock. But I've gotten 3 of them. The hanger steak is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So
The Delmonico's too.
the hanger steaks were actually called the butcher's cut way back in the day. And an old butcher asked me one day, "Do you have hanger steak?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is." And he told me. So then I got with our butchers. They're like, "Yep, you have to split that animal perfectly in half to get those little hanger steaks." And there's only 2 little hangers in a whole entire beef.
They melt in your mouth,
Yep.
and they've got so much flavor.
Yep, they do. They're one of my very favorites. I don't get them very often because we sell them so fast. It's literally less than a half a pound in a whole 800-pound animal.
Wow. So Why is it not the most pricey then?
Yeah, that's a good question.
In part because it's not a popular cut.
Okay.
Really?
So
Maybe we might need to cut this part of the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. Don't announce that.
you're going to be
Just
X-naying this part.
expose-
Just so it's like, oh wait, no, don't talk about hangers. We're going to take it for ourselves.
Wow.
So
So, do you have any crazy farming stories? Any?
Ooh.
Like, I'm sure you probably do.
I don't know if I have crazy farming stories. Like,
Anything that would a non-farmer would be like, wow, I can't believe that.
probably most of my life, most people couldn't understand, in all honesty.
I think that's probably true.
But like yesterday, I mean, we talked about this earlier, the whole livestock, dead stock. Like
Yeah.
you're going to have dead animals
yeah, there's
sometimes.
heartbreak involved with it.
Oh, I hate it.
So what that was? I kind of heard you talk.
I don't like having dead calves.
What happened yesterday?
A cow had a set of twins yesterday.
Hmm.
One of them was born with the sack over its face, and when I got there, it wasn't going to live.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Is
I tried.
twins for a cow normal?
No, oh, not at all. So, although this is our second set of twins, and we've only got 15 babies on the ground right now, so it's just sometimes we have twins, and so we'll go years and not have any. One year we had 15 sets of twins.
Wow.
So I don't
How
know
many do you plan on, or do you expect to have this year? New cows, babies?
New babies,
Yeah.
like 110, 112 in the spring calving season. So,
Wow,
but
that's a lot.
but yeah, it's just part of it.
Yeah.
But as we were talking about abuse, had someone come into my farm yesterday and watched me trying to save this calf, it might have looked like abuse as I'm trying to get it to breathe. I'm doing the best I can for the calf, but
Yeah.
someone from the outside looking in that doesn't understand
Yeah.
would not have maybe seen it that
Right.
way.
Well, and this is nature. I mean, it happens.
It's nature.
absolutely
Things do
happens.
die. And you can put in all the time and effort and do everything right. And sometimes we have calves that are born just stillborn. It's for no rhyme or reason, whether something happened inside, like whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just part of it. So it's not great. And we don't like it. And it makes me very
of
angry.
course. Yeah.
But it's just part of
Yeah.
having livestock.
And then you got to just compartmentalize it, I guess, and
Yep,
move on. But,
exactly.
well, I would say you know, honestly, I do find it, heroic, what people do.
I don't know if it's heroic.
Oh, it is. No, it is. I mean, honestly,
But
it's,
people in this industry, they do it because they love it and they have a passion for it, even on the bad days. Like the other day when
Especially.
it was so cold.
it's easy to do it on the good days.
Oh,
That's
it's
the
easy
thing.
to do it on a fall day that's
Yeah.
beautiful and everything's going right.
When you're taking your Christmas card picture and it's like, all right.
Everything's looking beautiful. We didn't even get Christmas cards out this year because that's just how it happened.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but days like whatever day it was, 2 days ago when the tractor's not
-5.
starting,
Yeah.
heated water bowls frozen all day long.
Yep.
I was not loving my job that day, but it's just part of it.
But
When
you
you're
didn't
freezing
quit.
cold and
Yeah.
you just have to stay outside, so
No,
it's all good.
it is heroic. I'll say it. You can be modest, but it is heroic, and millions of people, hundreds of billions of people, rely on farmers to do what they do. And if farmers suddenly decided to go on strike around the world, people would get pretty devastated pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I really
would.
appreciate it. Your place is amazing.
Thank you.
Your product is amazing. Your stories are amazing, and I really appreciate what you do. And
Thank you.
again, your passion, it shows, and it shows into the product that you make. So
Thank you.
thank you for doing it.
We grow it. We don't make it. We grow it.
Make good, grow.
So where can
Foster.
people find your beef if they're living in, Michigan? I know you sell in Locavana, obviously, so that's one location.
Yes.
You've got your own farm store.
Locavana, our own farm store
That's out in Alto.
in Alto on
Michigan.
100th Street.
Yep.
Ridgeviewlocalbeef.com is our website. You can find all the information there. In the summertime, Deep Roots Produce, they carry our beef in their little produce shop.
Cool.
And then Caledonia Farmers Elevator has our beef in their shop too.
Awesome.
So,
And the Ada Farmers Market.
Ada Farmers Market starting June 3rd, I think is that first Tuesday in June. And then
Awesome.
Caledonia Farmers Market is May 17th, I think is the starting Saturday.
Awesome.
So,
No,
yeah,
that's
those are the
excellent.
places.
Very cool. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you very much for
Thank you for having
coming
me
today,
today.
and
Yeah,
for
anytime.
all the insight. I learned a lot. I a lot of people did. So
Well,
thank
good.
you.
Well, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jamie.